Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're here right now, there's a very good chance you're either a die-hard ARMY, a watch enthusiast, or maybe, just maybe, you're someone who typed Jungkook Hublot into the search bar at 2 in the morning because you couldn't sleep and you needed to know everything. And honestly? Same. Because today we are diving deep, and I mean really deep, into one of the most talked about luxury brand collaborations in recent K-pop history. We're talking about Jungkook and Hublot. But this isn't just going to be a surface-level recap of what you already saw on Twitter or TikTok. No. We're going beyond that. We're pulling back the curtain on the things that most people scroll past, the details that got buried under the hype, and the story behind how this collaboration even came to be in the first place. So if you're ready, let's get into it. First, let's set the scene. Jungkook, full name John Jungkook, is the youngest member of BTS, one of the most globally recognized music groups in the entire world. And when we say globally recognized, we're not just throwing that around loosely. BTS has broken records on Billboard, sold out stadiums across 6 continents, and accumulated a fanbase so loyal and so passionate that the word ARMY has become synonymous with cultural force. Jungkook, in particular, has always stood out not just because of his vocals or his dancing or his insane athleticism, but because of his aesthetic. The way he carries himself, the way he dresses, the way he presents himself to the world, it's intentional, it's sharp, and it's always evolving. So when a luxury brand like Hublot, a Swiss watchmaker with more than 4 decades of history and a reputation for bold, unconventional design, decided to bring Jungkook into their world as a brand ambassador, it wasn't just a business decision. It was a statement. But here's the thing that most people don't fully appreciate: Hublot doesn't just hand out brand ambassador deals like candy. This is a company that has historically aligned itself with the absolute pinnacle of achievement in various fields. They've worked with football legends, Formula 1 champions, and some of the most respected figures in art and culture. So when they chose Jungkook, they weren't just chasing a trend. They were making a very deliberate, very calculated choice. And understanding why they made that choice, that's where things get really interesting. Let's talk about Hublot as a brand for a moment, because if you're coming at this purely from the K-pop side, you might not know the full picture. Hublot was founded in 1980 by Carlo Crocco, a man who wanted to do something that the watch industry at the time considered almost heretical. He wanted to combine gold with rubber. That sounds simple, right? But in the world of fine watchmaking, that was revolutionary. The Swiss watch industry in 1980 was deeply conservative, deeply traditional, and deeply suspicious of anything that challenged the status quo. And here comes this guy saying, what if we took one of the most prestigious materials in luxury goods and paired it with one of the most industrial, practical, unglamorous materials imaginable? The result was the classic fusion, and while it didn't immediately take the world by storm, in fact, the industry largely dismissed it at first, it planted a seed that would eventually grow into something massive. The brand's real transformation came in 2004 when Jean-Claude Biver took over as CEO. If you know anything about the luxury watch industry, you know Biver's name. He's the man who helped resurrect Blancpain from near extinction, who transformed Omega into a global powerhouse, and who eventually took Hublot and turned it into what it is today. His philosophy was built on 3 words that became the brand's motto: be first, be different, be unique. And under his leadership, Hublot launched the Big Bang collection, which became one of the most recognizable watch designs in the world. Suddenly Hublot wasn't just a watch company. It was a cultural statement. Now here's where it connects to Jungkook. Hublot's entire brand identity is built on the idea of fusion, the idea that 2 things that shouldn't go together can create something extraordinary when they're combined with intention and craftsmanship. Gold and rubber. Tradition and innovation. Precision and boldness. When you look at Jungkook's career, his public persona, his artistic output, you see the exact same principle at work. He is a classically trained performer in the most rigorous entertainment system in the world, but he consistently pushes against the edges of what that system expects from him. He paints. He photographs. He experiments with genres and sounds that K-pop artists don't traditionally explore. He's someone who contains multitudes, and those multitudes coexist in him not despite each other, but because of each other. That fusion, that's the thread that connects him to Hublot in a way that goes beyond a marketing contract. Now, one of the things that most people in the ARMY community were buzzing about when the collaboration was announced was the scale of it. This wasn't a casual endorsement deal where Jungkook would post a picture wearing a watch and collect a check. The way Hublot approached this collaboration was significant. They positioned Jungkook not just as someone who wears their watches, but as someone who embodies the spirit of the brand. That's a very different thing. When you're just a celebrity spokesperson, you show up, you smile, you hold the product, and you leave. But when a brand invests in you as an embodiment of their identity, the relationship goes much deeper. The creative direction changes. The storytelling changes. The way they integrate you into their campaigns, their events, their global narrative, all of it shifts. And think about the timing of this announcement. Jungkook had just launched his solo career in earnest, stepping out from the group context and establishing himself as an individual artist on the world stage. His debut solo album, Golden, had demonstrated to the entire music industry that his appeal wasn't contingent on the BTS framework, it was its own thing entirely. Seven had performed phenomenally internationally. He had done major performances and appearances that showed the world he wasn't just riding the wave of the group's success, he was generating his own. Hublot made the move at exactly this inflection point, and that timing was not an accident. Luxury brands at this level don't stumble into decisions. Every move is researched, analyzed, and calculated. They saw a man at the beginning of what could only be described as a second chapter, and they decided to be part of that chapter. Here's another layer to this that often gets overlooked. The luxury goods market, particularly in the watch segment, has been undergoing a fascinating transformation over the past several years. The traditional consumer base for high-end watches, older, predominantly Western, predominantly male, is not growing. But a new consumer base is emerging, and that base is younger, more globally diverse, more digitally native, and more connected to culture through music, fashion, and social media than through the traditional pathways of legacy advertising. Brands like Hublot, Rolex, Patek Philippe, they're all watching this shift happen in real time, and they're all trying to figure out how to speak to this new generation without alienating their existing customers or compromising their prestige. Jungkook represents something very specific to that new consumer base. He's not just famous, countless people are famous. He's trusted. He's authentic in a way that resonates with younger audiences who have finely tuned radar for anything that feels performative or corporate. ARMY in particular has spent years analyzing every aspect of who Jungkook is, what he chooses to wear, what he listens to, what he eats, what he reads, and they've built a picture of someone whose tastes feel genuinely personal rather than commercially manufactured. When someone like that aligns with a brand, the endorsement carries a different weight. It doesn't feel like advertising. It feels like a recommendation from someone you trust. That's extraordinarily valuable, and Hublot knew it. Let's also talk about what this means for the representation side of things, because that's something the ARMY community has been passionate about from day one. For a long time, the upper echelons of Western luxury brands, the Swiss watchmakers, the French fashion houses, the Italian leather goods companies, maintained a very particular image of who their customer was and who their ambassador should be. The movement toward more diverse representation has been gradual and, critics would argue, not always entirely genuine. But when a brand like Hublot, which sits at the very top of the prestige hierarchy in watchmaking, puts Jungkook at the front of their global campaigns, that's a meaningful signal. It says something about where these brands believe the future of luxury is headed. And it reflects the very real global shift in cultural influence that K-pop, and BTS specifically, has helped accelerate. There's also the question of what Jungkook himself brings to the creative process. This is something that often gets lost when we talk about celebrity brand deals, because we tend to focus on the transactional nature of them. But Jungkook is a deeply creative person. He's someone who has always been hands-on with his art, who cares about the visual language of what he puts out into the world, who has spent years developing an aesthetic sensibility that is distinctly his own. When a creative person of that caliber enters into a relationship with a brand, there's potential for something more interesting to happen than just a photo shoot. How much creative input Jungkook has had behind the scenes we may not fully know, but the energy that comes through in the campaign materials, the way they're shot, the mood they evoke, the way Jungkook wears the watches not just as accessories but as extensions of a persona, suggests a level of intentionality that goes beyond what you typically see in these collaborations. And then there's the fandom effect, which we absolutely cannot underestimate. When Jungkook wears something, it moves. That's not an exaggeration, and it's not just enthusiasm, it's documented. There are entire tracking accounts dedicated to cataloging items that Jungkook has worn and the subsequent sales spikes those items experience. With Hublot, the effect is different because we're not talking about a hoodie or a pair of sneakers. We're talking about watches that start at thousands of dollars. But the ripple effect is still real. The number of people who became genuinely interested in watchmaking, in Hublot's history, in the mechanics of what makes these timepieces extraordinary, that number spiked measurably after the collaboration was announced. Hublot got a new audience, an audience that was young and engaged and curious, and that audience got an entry point into a world they might never have explored otherwise. That's genuinely interesting from a cultural standpoint. What's also worth discussing is how this collaboration has evolved in the public eye. The initial announcement generated enormous buzz, as you'd expect. But what's kept the conversation going is the way both sides have continued to build on it. Jungkook has been seen with various pieces from the collection in different contexts, not just in formal campaign settings, but in the kind of candid, unscripted moments that fans pay close attention to. That continuity matters. It signals that this isn't just a check-the-box endorsement deal that gets forgotten 6 months later. It's a relationship with staying power, and staying power in the world of brand partnerships is genuinely rare. There's one more thing I want to touch on before we wrap up, and that's what this collaboration represents in the broader context of Jungkook's post-BTS solo journey. BTS as a group are on a hiatus while the members fulfill their mandatory military service obligations in South Korea. Jungkook enlisted, and like his bandmates, he stepped away from the spotlight, at least temporarily, to meet that obligation. That period of absence, rather than diminishing his cultural presence, has in many ways reinforced it. The deals and collaborations that were set in motion during his active period continue to resonate. His music continues to chart. His name continues to generate headlines. And partnerships like the one with Hublot continue to keep him in the cultural conversation even when he's not actively promoting. That's the real secret behind this collaboration, if we're being completely honest. It's not just about a beautiful watch on a beautiful wrist in a beautifully shot campaign, though all of those things are undeniably true. It's about the alignment of two things that were built to last. Hublot has survived and thrived for over 40 years in one of the most competitive and unforgiving industries in the world by refusing to be ordinary. Jungkook has built a legacy that has already outlasted the typical K-pop career timeline by a significant margin, and he's still only in the early chapters of what his story will ultimately be. When those two forces come together, the result isn't just a brand deal. It's a cultural moment. And cultural moments, when they're done right, have a way of becoming timeless, which, when you think about it, is exactly what a great watch is supposed to be. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, drop a like, leave a comment telling me what you think about the Jungkook x Hublot collaboration, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. See you then.